It started out like any other quiet morning, until I heard the sharp crunch of heavy boots behind my workshop. When I looked up, a man in a dark tactical vest marked HOA cop was already stepping onto my property, uninvited. His name tag read, B. Morton. He carried himself like a man who believed a vest gave him power. Before we get deeper into this story, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Let's see how far this one travels. I stepped out from the shed, wiping grease from my hands. You're trespassing, I said flatly, nodding at the gate sign that clearly read, private property, no entry without consent. Blake smirked. I'm conducting an HOA inspection. You've got unapproved structures back here. Could be a fine, maybe even removal. Inspection, I repeated. You're not law enforcement. The HOA can't inspect anything without a 72-hour notice under Texas Property Code 209.6. He shrugged, dismissive. We don't need permission when there's a violation. I took a slow step closer. Actually you do. What you're doing is criminal trespass, Texas Penal Code 3.4. You cross a posted line without consent, that's a Class B misdemeanor. And yes, I can press charges. Blake's grin faded, and his hand brushed the holster on his belt. That's when I noticed the gun. A black handgun. Real. My pulse spiked. I forced my voice to stay calm. You're carrying a firearm while pretending to be law enforcement, I said. That's impersonating an officer, a felony under Penal Code 3.5 and 12. His smirk returned. You think this vest is fake? HOA authorized it. You don't get to question my authority. My jaw tightened. You're lucky my ring camera is recording this and not calling the sheriff right now. He stepped closer, gravel crunching under his boots. You do that, he said in a low, cold tone, and we'll see how fast your little shed gets torn down once the board hears about your attitude. I didn't back up an inch. Then go tell them yourself, because you're done here. For a few tense seconds, neither of us moved. Just the red blink of the camera between us and the weight of silence. Then he muttered something under his breath, and stormed off toward his white truck parked by the fence. I thought that would be the end of it. But 2 hours later, when I went to check my mail, a bright yellow citation was taped to my box, an HOA violation notice, signed by Chairwoman Samantha Hull herself. According to her, I was being fined $500 for interfering with HOA field enforcement. That's when it hit me. Blake wasn't just some wannabe cop. The HOA was backing him, and if they wanted to play dirty, I could play smarter. The next morning, just after sunrise, I heard the familiar growl of a truck engine echoing down my driveway. My stomach tightened instantly. That sound had become a warning. Sure enough, when I stepped outside, there it was again. The same white pickup, the same bold HOA cop lettering plastered across the vest of the man stepping out. Blake Morton was back. But this time, he wasn't alone. Sitting in the passenger seat was Samantha Hull, the HOA chairwoman herself, the one who'd signed the $500 citation. Her arms were crossed, her chin lifted like she'd come to judge a court case instead of a neighbor. Blake didn't even bother parking properly. He rolled right over the edge of my flower beds, crushing the soil under his tires like he owned the place. I was already recording before I even opened the door. Blake, I said evenly, walking out onto the porch. You're trespassing again. I warned you yesterday. You and your board chair are both violating Texas Penal Code 3.05. I can have both of you arrested. Samantha rolled down her window, her tone dripping with arrogance. You're overreacting, Mr. Daniels. Blake's conducting an inspection for code compliance. HOA law permits access for enforcement. Not without notice. I shot back. You can't just storm onto someone's land waving a gun and a badge that doesn't exist. That's impersonating a peace officer, and I've got every second of it on video. Blake stepped out, again resting his hand casually on the side of his holster, a silent threat. Why don't you relax, he said with a smirk. We're just here to take a few pictures. I took a step forward, standing between him and my shed. Take your pictures from the street. That's public access. Step one more inch onto my property, and you're breaking the law. He tilted his head, amused. You really think you can threaten an enforcement officer? You're not an officer, I said flatly. You're a man in a fake vest, driving a truck that's about to get impounded for trespassing. Samantha climbed out too, waving a clipboard like it was some kind of shield. You signed the HOA charter, Mr. Daniels. That means you consented to inspections. You can't fight the law. I glared at her. I signed to maintain the neighborhood, not to surrender my rights. You can't use HOA rules to override state law. Blake ignored both of us and walked right past the no trespassing sign, snapping photos of my shed like he owned it. The sound of gravel crunching under his boots made my blood boil. Then his hand went back to his holster. Back up, I warned, my voice low but steady. He smirked again, and in one smooth motion, he pulled the gun halfway free. You gonna stop me? He sneered. For a moment, everything slowed down. The sound of wind, the creak of the porch step beneath my boot, all of it faded. My instincts took over. Years of training, discipline and restraint kicked in. My hands lifted slightly, not to fight but to keep the situation under control. Put the weapon down, Blake, I said, keeping my voice calm. Drawing a firearm on a civilian without cause is aggravated assault under Penal Code 22.
You'll go to prison for that." Samantha froze. She took a step back, her confidence finally cracking. "Blake, maybe don't," but he didn't listen. The barrel tilted upward, just enough to make my heart hammer. I didn't move. Instead, I slowly pulled out my phone, thumb hovering over the emergency call button. "This is your last warning," I said quietly. "Holster it, now." For a split second, his eyes met mine, and I saw it, that mix of anger and fear that comes when a man realizes he's in too deep. His finger twitched on the trigger. Then, sirens. The wail cut through the air like lightning. Red and blue lights flashed across the fence line as a sheriff's cruiser came roaring down the gravel drive, stopping just short of Blake's truck. The deputy stepped out, gun drawn, shouting, "Drop it now." Blake froze. The color drained from his face as the reality of the moment hit him. He still had his gun out, and the sheriff wasn't playing games. "Hands on your head," the deputy yelled again. Samantha raised her hands instinctively, backing up against the truck. Blake's weapon hit the dirt a second later with a heavy thud. I just stood there, heart pounding, camera still rolling, watching the self-proclaimed HOA cop realize that his little power trip had just turned into a full-blown criminal arrest, and that was just the beginning, because what came next would expose the entire HOA, every secret, every cover-up, and show the whole neighborhood what kind of people were really running things. The moment Blake's gun hit the ground, the entire street changed. The sheriff's deputy, a tall man with a shaved head and eyes sharp as steel, didn't hesitate. He cuffed Blake's wrists behind his back before the so-called HOA cop could even think about protesting. "You're under arrest for brandishing a firearm, trespassing, and impersonating an officer," the deputy said, reading the charges loud enough for Samantha and every neighbor watching from behind their curtains to hear. Samantha's jaw dropped. Wait, this is a misunderstanding," she stammered, clutching her clipboard like it could save her. "He's part of the HOA safety team." The deputy shot her a glare. "Ma'am, he's wearing a vest that says HOA cop, carrying a loaded firearm, and threatening a homeowner on private land. You think that's a misunderstanding?" Blake tried to talk, his voice shaky now. I was just enforcing neighborhood rules, man. He was being aggressive. Save it." The deputy cut him off. "You don't enforce laws that don't exist. You just broke several real ones." I stayed quiet. My phone kept recording as 2 more patrol cars pulled up, lights flashing like a Christmas parade. Neighbors had started peeking from behind mailboxes and driveways. For months, people had whispered about Blake, how he acted like some self-appointed sheriff, how he scared kids off the park trail for rule violations. But nobody had seen him caught in the act, until now. As they put him in the back of the cruiser, I noticed something that made my stomach twist. His vest had a real badge pinned to it. Not an official one, but close enough to fool someone. It read, Neighborhood Enforcement Division. I looked at the sheriff. "That badge looks legit." He nodded grimly. "Yeah, we've seen this before. Some of these HOA guys order fake badges online and think they're untouchable." He turned to me. "You said you had footage." "Every second," I said, holding up my phone. "Good. That's evidence." Samantha's face turned pale. "Evidence? You can't just "We'll have our lawyer." "Ma'am," the sheriff interrupted, "you'd better call one. Because if you approved this, you're looking at criminal negligence and conspiracy to impersonate an officer." The words hit her like a slap. For the first time, she didn't have anything to say. They hauled Blake away, the cuffs glinting in the sun, and the deputy turned to me. "Mr. Daniels," he said, "I'll need your statement at the station, but between you and me, you just did this neighborhood a favor." I nodded, watching the truck disappear down the road. About time someone did. The story spread faster than wildfire. By Monday, the footage had hit every local Facebook group, HOA forum, and even the evening news. The headline read, "Fake HOA cop arrested after drawing gun on homeowner." Neighbors who'd stayed quiet before suddenly started sharing their own stories. Blake harassing delivery drivers, threatening teenagers for unauthorized bikes, even fining an elderly couple for leaving their trash bin out too long. It turned out, the HOA board had been letting him patrol the neighborhood for months, completely off the books. No license, no oversight, just ego and intimidation. When investigators dug deeper, things got worse. Blake had a prior record, 2 counts of assault, and 1 charge of unlawful firearm possession. And somehow, the HOA had still hired him as their enforcer. Samantha tried to deny everything, but the emails told the truth. She'd approved every inspection, every fine, every intimidation report. Within days she resigned. The HOA board collapsed right after, but the story didn't end there. I received a call from the sheriff himself 2 weeks later. "Daniels," he said, "thought you'd want to know. Morton took a plea deal, 2 years probation, and mandatory counseling, but he's banned from serving on any community enforcement group ever again." I didn't say much. I just stared out my window at the quiet street that used to feel hostile. "Appreciate the update," I said finally. He paused. "You know, it's funny. After that video went viral, half the county's HOAs are rewriting their rules now. You started something bigger than you think." When the call ended, I stepped outside. The air felt lighter somehow. Kids were riding bikes again. The neighbors waved instead of hiding behind fences. And there, on the corner where Blake used to park his truck, the new HOA committee had put up a fresh sign: community safety, respect and rights for all residents. I uploaded one last video, the full story, every second of that day. At the end I said, this wasn't about one man with a badge. It was about power, and what happens when good people stay silent. If you ever think your HOA is above the law, remember this story. The law protects homeowners, not people who pretend to be cops. The video blew up overnight. Thousands of comments poured in, from veterans, lawyers, homeowners, even real officers, all saying the same thing. About time someone stood up. That night I sat back, closed my laptop, and finally felt peace. The neighborhood was quiet again, and for the first time since moving there, I didn't have to watch my driveway with one eye open, because the so-called HOA cop learned the hard way. A fake badge doesn't make you above the law.